Hello and welcome to Creator Toolbox. This is the show for ServiceNow builders, developers, and admins, and curious individuals. Wait, I'm borrowing from another show. Yeah, we are going to equip you with tools you can use for your toolbox on ServiceNow so you know more about what's available. Otherwise, you fall into the trap that I do and you keep using the same hammer for everything when really maybe a screwdriver works better. I could watch that little robot at that opening animation all day, but there's better things to do, like getting on with our content. Good morning. My name is Chuck Tomasi. I am a senior developer advocate with ServiceNow. Been with the company since 2010, was a customer for a couple of years before then. And my computing history goes way, way back into the Stone Ages, which we won't get into here. We're here to look at new stuff, not old stuff. Let's go around the horn to the man to that direction for introduction.
Right. Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Brian Bimschleger, Principal Product Manager here at ServiceNow, and I've been here for about 2 years working on things like Flow Designer and Process Automation Designer and some new automation products that we are working on. And I'm excited to demo some cool things that we launched in the San Diego release for you today for Flow Designer. We'll go down to the person beneath me.
That's me. Thanks, Bim. My name is Brad Tilton. I'm a senior developer advocate here at ServiceNow. I've been building on the platform for a while, and I am excited to get into some of these Flow Designer enhancements that are pretty awesome today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Earl Duque, and while they're senior developer advocates, I'm a baby developer advocate. So newer to ServiceNow, about
That's
6
the
months
official
in.
title.
Baby developer advocate is what I had the interview process was wild. But yeah, new to ServiceNow, but not new to the platform. Been here around for almost 5 years now, mostly with higher ed.
And I just want to point out that the tag above Brian's left shoulder says San Diego. So if you see that tag on any of our videos, you'll know what's, we're all, it's not up here this time. You'll know what release of video you're watching in the future. What we're showing you here is part of our San Diego early availability release. We've got two main topics to show you today. One is save as a flow template. So you can create a flow and then say, I want to make this a template. This is a common use case. The other is our new flow diagramming view, which I'm going to save all the fanfare for Brian. He's our subject matter expert today, and want to give him all the glory he and his team deserve for creating such wonderful features that make all of our developer lives easier. So over to you, Brian.
All right. Well, thanks for the intro, Chuck. I appreciate it. The first thing that we're going to tackle today is saving a flow as a template. Like Chuck mentioned, the use case is pretty reasonable. If you are an admin or your app developer within your company and your company is starting to creep into the citizen developer space, there's probably a good chance that you want to have a warm start for your new developers that are coming into ServiceNow. Now, previously in Quebec, I believe, when App Engine Studio came out, when you create an app and you say you want to create a flow, one of these screens that you get, the first thing that you see is a bunch of templates that pop in. So in this example, I don't have the necessary spokes installed, but these are all pre-configured flows. So I could click on it and it would have the trigger and actions and everything all configured. Now, this is nice if you're working on creating an incident and posting to Jira or sending a notification to a workspace, or you have one of these use cases that is on the screen. But today, let's see if this one will work. What happens when you click on one of these templates is there is a little bit of a guided experience that walks you through the buttons and switches that you need to set up in this early wizard so the user can just get up and running with their flow. So in this example, you choose the table that you want to trigger from. And then what's interesting about this is when we present our flow templates to the user, you can optionally present a small subset of the fields that you want to collect the user's input from to fully configure the flow. So again, we're just walking through a quick example of how flow templates work right now, and then we'll get into how to build your own. So we'll just say this is example template. Now, when I click continue, this is going to build a flow behind the scenes. And as our helpful copy mentions, this may take a few seconds. So hopefully the demo
Thank you for the
works.
animation bar to let us know that it's not frozen.
You have to do
I know.
something. Sometimes the spinning circle just doesn't cut it. I want to see the guy on the right type. Like he's actually creating the flow for you.
Come on.
Live demos.
Yeah, fun stuff.
So while we're talking
Well,
about that, the
yeah.
create flow template, is this only available within App Engine Studio, or is this available for flow designers outside of AES?
Yeah, great question. So for this release, which is our first release of saving a flow as a template, you can access your flow templates that you've created within App Engine Studio. But currently, the only way to create them is in standalone Flow Designer.
Oh,
I
okay.
realize that's a little bit of a little bit of a switcheroo, but I assure you, we're working on it. It was kind of for technical implementation, but you know what? Let's take a look at how that works with creating or saving a flow as a template, and then we can come back to this app and walk through it.
Okay.
So,
and is this available in EA, or are you working on a special instance that's a little bit ahead? I want to get the availability and timing right on this because I didn't see it on my PDI this morning.
Right. So saving a flow as a template is going to be available in the store. It's available in the store right now, but it'll start working once San Diego Patch 1 comes out, just because there were some technical things we needed to iron out. But it'll be in the store as Flow Template Builder. And then
Flow Template
you
Builder.
can go there
Look for
and
it, kid.
install it. Yeah. So here's what we are going to do. While this is still running in the background, we're going to create a new flow. And let's say, Brad or Earl are in my organization, and I know that Brad and Earl build apps. We're going to build a basic flow that when a new record gets created, we're going to send someone an email notifying that the record got created. It's pretty basic, but when we save a flow as a template, we can make it so this is a really easy flow to get up and running, and we can really focus on one or two questions to ask.
Brian, can I have you bump up your font size 1 or 2 notches?
How about that?
That'll work until Flow Designer starts misbehaving. We'll do that.
All right. Here we're gonna do this just as a trick to make sure it bumps to the top of our flow templates.
At.
Yeah. We have a couple enhancements coming to that flow templates page in App Engine Studio that allows more granular control over how stuff appears. Search, sort, filter, all that good stuff.
Categories, perhaps?
Yes, perhaps. A bunch of different things are coming. We've been releasing a lot of content packs for a variety of flow templates. So I think there are about 200 flow templates out there available via the store right now that were created by ServiceNow. So we definitely acknowledge the need for better categorization and organization of that stuff. So all right.
What a good developer puts in a description.
Yeah.
We could all learn a thing.
Because I found when you're going through these in a demo environment, you try and create the same thing a couple times, and it turns out you have a lot of BIM creates a send email template. So you need some way to.
As developers, we're not real original with our data. Able tutor, the able tutor.
Sure. So in this example, we're going to say, all right, when an incident is created, we're not even going to send a notification because that might be, too much legwork for this demo. We're just going to send an email. And to start, we'll send it to me. But when I save this flow as a template, we'll enable the author to enter whatever recipient they want in this field. Okay. And we'll try and use some pill pick values here. So,
There's another quick glance at a San Diego enhancement is the data pill. What do you call it? Truncation, where the dots appear for the longer data pills?
Yeah, you know what? It was one of those things where we heard 0 customer complaints about it, but it was one of those UI things that drove everyone on our team up the wall. When you'd add a really deeply nested data pill and it takes up 4 or 5 lines and your subject field takes up half the screen, like no one had prioritized it for a while, but every time we demoed something, you could just hear everyone just go like, ah. So
And if it's
we figured out
bothering
a way to
you,
make it work.
imagine who else is bothering.
Oh yeah. So here's what we're gonna do. Now this is pretty basic, right? So incident is created. We'll send it to someone directly. We have a couple pill values right here. Now this is obviously really straightforward. Like we're nothing super complex, but if someone is new to ServiceNow, new to Flow Designer, new to App Engine Studio, there are a couple concepts in here that are new to that developer. Thinking about understanding what the triggers are and how they work, how to configure them. Additionally, sending an email, using the data pill picker might be not intuitive for the very first time someone comes in if they're more citizen developer or lower on the technical skill level. So even though this isn't the most complex flow that we're showing, there's a lot of legwork that we can do to make it easier for people who are building new flows if they have low familiarity. So we have our trigger, we have our action. Now we're going to save this flow as a template. And if you have Flow Template Builder installed via the store, once we click on our More menu, our More Actions menu up here, Save Flow as Template is going to be an option for you directly beneath Flow Stages. Now,
Nice.
Let's click on it, see what happens. Boom. We have a modal that comes up that kind of tells you how this is going to work. So, behind the scenes, we're technically creating a new thing now. We're creating what is a flow template object. So we have the opportunity to rename it something else if we want. So we'll append that. And I'm going to make this available in global for now. All right, so we have our template and we have our application. So all of the steps that were at the bottom, we could read them, or we could do it live. So let's do that instead. Okay, so what we see now is our flow template view, right? Looks similar, but maybe a little bit different in some areas to flow templates. Most notably, we have this little guy up here, this little switch to go between flow view and template setup. So this is showing what our flow looks like right now. And, we can go and click in and there's information in there. But when I go into template setup, that's where the power of this feature gets really augmented. And this is where all the the magic really happens. So when we go into template setup, we have a similar view that shows all of our actions or all of our steps within this flow. And if I click into incident created, I get an option for what I want to do with the values or the inputs for each one of those steps. Now, there are a couple different options here. One is we can use the default value, which is what I defined when I built the flow in the first place. So we can see that default value is incident. Or I can collect a new user input, which means during that wizard process in App Engine Studio, I can prompt the user for what table they actually want, or I can use a template variable. And we'll get to that in a second. So we're going to say the first thing that we need to know for this template that I'm creating is like what table do we want to listen for? You know, like when a record is created on this particular table, then we're going to send an email. So we can ask the user for that. But if we're in a wizard and someone comes in for the first time and all they see is a table and then a little selection field, it's not super specific, and it might get a little confusing for users. So we actually have a fancy little advanced options menu.
Oh, look at that. This is like
where
what record producers do to normal field labels. You could put a real humanized question on this. I love it. You just won me over.
Woo! That's all it took. An advanced options section. All right.
That was one of the things that
Creator
just blew
Toolbox is
me
over,
away when I
folks.
first saw ServiceNow back in 2008. It's like, we can ask human questions?
Yeah.
I only ask 3 of them? Nice.
Cool. So we have a couple options here that make it a little bit more contextual for the end user. So, you know, a lot of what flow templates are all about is, you know, reducing that time to value for someone who might not be as familiar with the guts of how Flow Designer works. And if your admins are working on, or your pro developers, or you know your IT department is working on building out a couple of these templates, if they add these nice touches of a temporary of a field label right here and making things mandatory, adding a hint, it really does reduce that friction of learning what the heck is going on. So next thing that we are going to do is we're going to collect an input for the user for who they're going to send this email to. So we'll do this again. And we'll make that mandatory. Now, once we get down here, we get into the subject and the body. Here's what we're going to want to do. We are going to well, I think for this example, what we can do is we are going to use a template variable. Now, much like normal pill values or flow variables, template variables are a similar concept. So we're going to be able to see a template variable of 2, a template variable of table in here. So in this example, we can, it's a little bit crude just for this demo, but we can take the subject of our email and we can say, hey, the subject of this email is going to be the name of the table that we accepted in the first step of our wizard. Might not be super practical for this example, but believe we can go back and look at our flow here, and you can see how it kind of populates and updates our flow, where I can look at send email action and my template variables are 2 and the subject has been replaced with the table. Now, you'll note that this flow is in read-only mode, and part of the reason for that is once you save your flow as a template, it's going to put that flow in read-only, just so your flow and your template itself don't get out of sync. It is something that we are working on for future releases to really allow you to update and modify your flow as you're building the template.
And you may want to go back and make revisions to your template. You go, oh, they needed an email, but we
Yep.
also needed this other action in here. Is
Exactly.
that not possible at this release?
For right now, you can take your flow that you have built and you could
Mhm.
save it as a new template.
Oh,
If
okay.
you really wanted to like add an additional action here, but for right now, for this initial release, once you
Mhm.
kind of create that flow template, that flow is going to be the flow that's associated with it is going to be locked in.
Got ya. Okay.
All right, so we have our flow template now, and when the user attempts to create a flow in App Engine Studio from this very creatively titled template, BIM creates a send email template live. In theory, when the user clicks on that, we'll prompt them for two values. One will be the table, and then the other one should be the to field for our email. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is to activate our flow template. Fingers crossed it all goes according to plan. All right. Our initial flow was still running, so we'll cancel out of that. All right, so now we are going to add a new flow into our app. And once we click on this, oh no, let's try refreshing. It should be showing up for us right in
Yeah.
here. If it doesn't, oh, there we go.
There it is.
Just took
Live.
a second. So this is the template I just created, and it's bumped to the top because it's ordered by the name of the template right now. But all right, so this is our first thing. All right, now we can see our custom description. What table
Love it.
should we listen for? That we
Even a
defined.
question mark next to it for your
Yeah.
hint too.
This is our little help icon as well. So just to show you how this will actually work, let's update this to, we'll just say it's a interaction. I don't know if you have just Chuck
I don't think
but...
that's a valid one. There was a time when I could get away with first name at my old company. So I was like the guy who created email accounts.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I still have a business card that says that. Chuck@yourcompany.com. I went, wow, 30 years ago was a fun time.
Okay, so look at this. Compared to the first flow template that we tried, this one actually got created. So once I click on edit this flow, it's going to open up in Flow Designer in App Engine Studio, and it actually created this flow for us. Now, what's cool is we can see that my trigger now has interaction populated. And once I go into send email, Chuck's name is in there, and then the table from that we selected during the wizard process is also in here.
And everything else looks like you built it yourself. Wow,
exactly.
This is nice.
So, once the user enters that information during the wizard, it'll kind of flatten all the information. So the user, when they plop in here, they don't need to know the concept of a template variable or a template input or anything like that. All they know is they selected a table and they selected an email, and voila, they're in their flow ready to go. So we
I'd be really
think
curious
that,
to see what use cases customers come up with for this.
yeah, well, some of the big ones that we tend to get a lot of questions about with people that are newer to ServiceNow or getting into the role, or like how to correctly build approvals in Flow Designer, or if they, if an approval comes in and it's above a certain amount, it's going to require 2 approvals, or if it's less than a certain amount, it doesn't require any approval. It just kind of gets auto approved. So I know some of the kind of the business units that we've been working with on this, a lot of the use cases are creating an approval kind of template where the user enters in like, hey, what's your first threshold for requiring an approval, and what's your threshold for requiring a second approval? And
Sure.
we'll plop those values into like if statements to kind of handle all the routing. So that's probably one of our big use cases right now. But we also see we've seen a lot of examples where people need to copy their flows. Like they have some new business case that opens up and they have a flow that's working and they just want to like duplicate it and tweak some values. So instead of really relying on duplicate or copy functionality and then manually editing things, we're hoping that people adopt the template model a little bit more, because it kind of opens the doors for a lot of newer developers to contribute to building automation in the workplace. So
Good. Any other comments or questions, Brad or Earl?
We just got a question about, can template use decision table?
Oh, of course. Yeah. So kind of the way to think about it is anything that you can add into a flow, you can use in the, well, there are a couple ways I could interpret your question. The first is, can I include a decision table in a flow that turns into a template? And the answer is yes. Now, another way to interpret your question is, during the wizard and setup, can I include a decision table in there and route to different flow templates? The answer for that one is no. We'd have to select a single flow template that you want to build from, and it's always going to, that flow template will always point to one particular flow. Now, I see another comment in the chat from right above Tariq asking, how about versions in Flow Designer?
Steve,
So if your app is hooked up to source control, you hook it up to GitHub or something like that, we certainly support versioning in Flow Designer right now, but that's kind of not a great answer, because I know it's not super intuitive to know how to do that. And we don't have any controls within the UI to handle versioning. But what I can say is App Engine Studio is leading the charge on how to incorporate better source control into builders from a UI perspective. And I believe that they are releasing that in San Diego, or one of the San Diego store releases. So we're hoping to have more clear and understandable ways to go back to prior versions of your flow at some point in the future. Might not be full on source control. It might be a redo type of thing, or go back to a snapshot or something like that. But we certainly understand the need. All right. So, any other questions on flow templates before we are saving a flow as a template before we jump into diagramming?
Nope.
Nope, no one in
No?
chat.
All right. Let's do it. Flow diagramming.
Woohoo.
Uh-oh.
We weren't talking for 30 minutes. Oh, it's a different instance. I know we can get long-winded, but that was ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. So flow diagramming, very cool concept. Our entire team here is super excited about it, because ever since I've joined 2 years ago, it's been kind of the number one thing that people have been asking for, and one of the top inhibitors of customers not moving over from workflow into Flow Designer. And one of the reasons is if you have a flow that has a decent amount of logic in it, and obviously this example that we're looking at is not the most complex example, but it has a couple nested if statements in here. Once you really start nesting this logic and adding a lot into it, it can be difficult to follow where you go. And part of the reason here is, if you go into your if statement and ask for approval and the task is approved, you run step 4. Once step 4 is done, you would actually pop out to something that's down here. We found through a lot of customer and internal user testing that if people don't have that development or programming background that kind of relies on some of that indirect, jumping back out to the parent, following logic was really tough for people to figure out with Flow Designer. So one of the things we really wanted to do is make a more visual approach that kind of doubled down on obviousness. It's become a little bit of a running joke internally because I've said it so many times, but our indicator of success for this project was if you could put your finger on the start node, on the trigger, and trace your path all the way down to the end. That would be how we know if we're successful. We wanted every path to be obvious, everything to be direct. A line takes you to where you are going to go. And if there's multiple lines, like in a if statement, we include labels that tell you how you go on down each path. Now, we think this is a big improvement for visually representing sequence and logic within Flow Designer. Now, sometimes each of these views have different strengths. We certainly know there's a large portion of Flow Designer users that really love this type of view because it can be faster to read, especially if you're the one that built it and kind of know how things are put together, and really fast to create. But we found that this view right here is really good for sharing your work with others or bringing people up to speed on what's happening within your flow. And even honestly, we found internally, we like to toggle back and forth when we're building flows because one might be faster for building, but this view right here is much easier for debugging how your logic is actually working.
That was one thing that I found interesting too, was the debugging capability in here. If you have an if and an else that both have an end, your flow isn't going any further. You're done at that point.
Yeah.
And you can see this like disconnected, it says something like not connected branch or something, like you'll never get here indicated on this view, which I thought was really helpful for people who may not be real familiar. And the other thing that I didn't realize was, and maybe it was because I was watching an old video from October and the feature snuck in later, but I thought this was a view only thing at first, just to represent what was in the other view. But no, there's little plus icons all over the place to add actions.
Oh yeah. Now here's what we'll do. We'll show how this works. Again, we'll do it live.
Your names are more creative than mine. Mine end up being like ASDF.
Well, I kind of had to start creating more unique names because I had too many flows that were named ASDF, and I'd randomly cannot create a flow with the same name type of warnings.
ASDF G.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, all of my flows are named just the home row of my keyboard. So, all right. So, yeah, as Chuck mentioned, the initial plans for flow diagramming were to have it be read-only, at least, for the first release, as we kind of get our feet under us a little bit. But once we dug into it, we realized that it was achievable to really allow building of a flow in a diagram view. And we'll get into like some of the repercussions of that and what that means for future releases. But what I really wanted to show is how we actually build a flow. and we'll show some examples of how we can toggle back and forth as well. So the first thing that you can do is you can create a trigger just like you normally would have. And instead of a panel opening up in the middle section right here, we're following a convention pattern that I think was kicked off by Virtual Agent and is used in UI Builder and other builder tools like Process Automation Designer as well. And really leveraging this side panel to handle a lot of our editing and configuration.
Now that you mention it, the main stage canvas, what are we calling it now? Looks a lot like VA. I hadn't thought about that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we're exploring as well. From a back-end technology perspective, they're a little bit different in how they're constructed, but there are efforts internally to really unify how our builders look and feel, and start trying to identify, are there places where we can incorporate functionality so we can reduce unique builders. No movement publicly on that yet, but it's something that interests us in trying to make it easier for our end users.
Is there a print button or an easy way to print the diagram?
Man, early coming in with the heavy hitter questions here.
I heard that a lot from the Tech Now episode.
It's so interesting because print is one of those features that we don't hear anything about. We don't hear about it from customers for the standard diagramming or for the standard view of Flow Designer. I don't hear anything about it on community or in the dev Slack. Nobody talks about it, but as soon as we introduced diagramming, it was no matter where we talked about diagramming, one of the first comments was, "Can I print it?" And it's like, damn, no, we don't have that for version 1. But I think we do need to prioritize it because it's a common request that we're getting with diagramming now. And a lot of the feedback that we get is, hey, this looks perfect to be able to print and show the business stakeholder or
Exactly.
the business analyst or the C-suite, whoever it is that just needs to like double check how stuff is going from like a business process perspective.
If I can give you an anecdote, Bim, when I was working for a higher ed customer, this was before Flow Designer, way back then. I was creating a workflow, and workflow you would think is already very visual and you could trace your finger from beginning to end,
Sure.
but I wasn't able to convince stakeholders and upper leadership of the benefit of that workflow until I drew additional diagrams. I literally screenshotted the workflow, brought it into Photoshop, and drew boxes around certain sections and said, "This is stage 1 where the user will be doing this. This is stage 2." So like until I was able to like give them a visual print of it that had a little bit more explanation, like more like this, where it's much more cleaner and not in the weeds of the details and stuff like that. It wasn't until then I was able to convince them to go for it.
I could also
so
see,
interesting.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was going to say it's interesting. We have some other projects that we're working on, and we've come across that exact same insight with everyone that we've talked with as well. When you're planning out how something is going to work, just a visual boxes and arrows or whiteboard sketch, of how it works at a abstract view is so critical to getting everyone to understand how it works. So yeah, that's one of the things we're going for with this diagram view, and seems like print is the next step for that.
I can see this also being very, very helpful for as an option for the execution details. You want to see what happened. People are used to the old classic workflows, like, there's the green box and the blue line and the green box. Like, which way did my flow go and why? That might also be a good diagnostic tool as well.
Yeah. Well, we are, some of the stuff that we're thinking about in the future is, right now when you test a flow or view the execution, you go to that kind of top-down view where it shows each step of your flow that's running, and it has, green for success and red for error.
Mhm.
We're hoping to explore ways to bring that type of concept into the diagram view as well. So even at a zoomed out level, you could, follow the green line for the path to see which path your flow actually took
Right.
through logic, or where that error occurred. So we think that would be a pretty cool enhancement. Okay, so here's one thing I actually wanted to show. I got a couple things that we can walk through, but one of the key things that I want to talk about, we're going to show how this information syncs between the two views. So this is just a random data pill, again, kind of compressed so it doesn't take up multiple lines. But we've created a basic flow here that just has a trigger and a log. If I switch back to my standard view, we can see that whatever I entered in the diagram view is already in here. I didn't need to click. Oh, thanks, Grammarly. I didn't need to click save to make that happen. I didn't need to click activate. I can add a few more characters here, and once I go back, they're already visible.
Witchcraft.
Now, this was a high priority for us because once we started building this, we noticed that people were wanting to switch back and forth to view their flow different ways at different points of creation. So I don't know. It's like one of those small things, but I think it's super handy.
Love it.
All right, so let's add some logic. Oh, actually, we'll talk about some of the content that's in here first. So when we released in San Diego, and I saw some folks asking in the chat, one version, the initial version of this plugin released with San Diego and is included in automatically in your upgrade. But to actually enable the diagramming, you have to go to the plugin and install the updated version of the plugin. Now, since we're approaching flow diagramming in phases, the first phase of diagramming includes our core logic. So this would be your if, else, else if, end flow, and for each. Now, we were able to get in a couple others like get flow outputs and dynamic flow as well. But really the if and for each, and once we add an if, you can add an else and an else if. Basically, if and for each we found comprised over 80% of all flow logic used in customer flows. So those were the kind of the critical ones that we knew we needed to land. And then everything else that comes after that is, in a priority order. So when you start using flow diagramming, you'll be able to use any actions with the exception of data streaming actions right now. We're working on it. We'll be able to use these logics that you can see on the screen, with more coming with each release. And you should be able to use any subflow as well. So we get a decent amount of content out of the box, and with each successive release, we'll be introducing more to get it up to content parity with your with your standard view.
Brian, what will happen if your flow has something that doesn't exist in that menu you have open right now? Does it disable the diagramming view, or does it still try to render?
Earl, I could tell you the answer, or I could show you the answer.
Show us the answer. Show us the answer.
Yeah. Cool. So right now we have press tab or click to toggle views. Let's do this example. Let's say I'm going to do the following in parallel, and I'll just for the purposes of this demo, we are going to have two parallel branches. All right, so I've done the following in parallel, which is not supported in the diagram view. Now, if I attempt to go up into diagram view, oh no, diagram view is unavailable because of the following. unsupported logic type is present. So right now it doesn't tell you very specifically what that logic type is, but our documentation certainly notes what logic is in and out, and we also just talked about what logic is available. So
Thanks,
we
man.
do
That
prevent you
that
from
answers
getting into
JC's.
yeah. So let's get rid of that action and we'll go back in. Oh, it's a little interesting.
So theoretically speaking, we can if you want a flow that is compatible in diagram view, just make your entire you can basically make your entire flow within the diagram view at this point.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, you can build your whole thing out.
If it's not on the menu, you can't be incompatible.
Yeah. So one other thing that will my trigger disappeared. It's not good. All right. So if I click on my if, I can click to add conditions like I normally would be able to do. It's great condition right here. And one of the things we've heard from initial feedback is when we add a condition right now, this just switches from add condition to modify condition. We're working to make it more visible so you can preview what the condition is or make it more clear that something is behind this button at this point.
Oh, please don't print an encoded query.
No, like we talked about a couple times before, we're going to try and make it obvious. So either human readable or just even it might just be something that says a condition already exists here and you can click to view it. So we have a couple ideas. So all right. Once we click on that, we can even
Ooh.
see how my logic node updates to represent the label that I included on that if node. So Earl, kind of going back to your example, how you might need to print this out, or we might need to show what's happening to stakeholders. For certain pieces of logic on here, we can add that descriptive label where we can mask a little bit of the complexity and show exactly what's happening at that step.
Now, could you go back to the older view? Flip the view switch. I want to see. Did that go into? Okay, that went into the view, not into the annotation. Okay,
Correct.
got it.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
do
So all
annotations
the
appear on the diagramming view?
not yet.
Okay.
It's been a source of internal debate, I suppose, of whether to include annotations or not, because a lot of times customers were adding annotations to describe like how logic was working or how
Yeah.
something was working or explaining how certain paths were being taken. And the whole purpose of this diagram view is to make that more obvious visually. So,
Yeah, and I could see
one,
annotations on this may get a little messy depending on how they were implemented.
yeah, and we've talked about a couple different options where maybe we click on this, and if there's an annotation, it shows up in the
Right.
side panel, or maybe you hover on this and it shows it as a tooltip or something. But
Sure.
the more discussions that we had there, the more we realized we might be solving for a problem that the current layout already solves. So for the customers listening in on this call, test it out. Let us know. We're happy to explore annotations, but as of right now, it's a little bit lower on the priority list just because we felt we had already kind of solved some of that use case.
It's been thought about though, so you didn't miss it.
Yeah, there's lots of thinking, lots of sketches and prototypes and stuff like that. So now what's cool with this, one of our favorite parts of the diagramming view is especially if you're new to something like flow design or new to logic, we try and be smart and handle the emphasis on try to be smart, and handle some stuff for you. So in this example, we have, we're going to have a log and we'll have an if statement. We have an if that automatically produces a then. So let's we'll have a send notification as part of our then, right? And if we go back to our diagram view, we can say if the short description contains BIM, we're going to send our notification. And there's nothing on this false path. So if the short description does not contain BIM, we go to the end of our flow. And in Flow Designer, there's that like implied else, where if the if evaluates to false, we continue on. Now, once we're in the diagram view, we still have this branch, but as soon as I click the plus and I say, hey, I want to
it's going to add the else for you automatically.
Exactly. So we don't necessarily show the else here, but once we come back to this view, since we've added something on that false path, we'll automatically add in the else into your standard view. So this kind of concept of building out the else within your standard view, we just kind of take care of that for you.
It's faster.
Yep.
You clicked one thing and added a task instead of add else, then add task. So save a little bit of time this way.
So, and we feel that this type of representation of if it's false, then go directly here, and once you're done with create task, then you kind of loop back to the end. Especially once we like, let's say at the end we'll create some record. So after notification or after create task, all roads lead to create record. With with this type of visualization, like I mentioned before, we frequently found that people didn't get, or lower code users didn't get, that once 3 successfully completed, they went to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel that with this type of diagram representation now, it's much more obvious that 3 goes to 6. So now it's kind of nice as well, because we differentiate between our arrows on here, so we can see that this create task, when it loops back and it kind of, this arrow rejoins right here and it closes off your if statement. So we tried to be clear of when you're building on the true path and when you are building after that if condition.
I like it.
So obviously this is a very simple example, but you look at something that's just a hair more complex with this business approval.
I was about to ask,
workflow.
it's like, show us the worst ones.
This is just a little more complex out of the box.
Just a little bit more complex, but it's a reasonable amount of business logic in here. But we do have zoom controls if you do want to zoom way out for a complex flow. And it's once we zoom in all the way. I forgot.
Oh,
So
nice.
we have like mini map controls if you really need to zoom in or out or really control that canvas. And search should work as well, which I don't believe is something that we have in standard Flow Designer. But if you want to hunt for a very specific action and you have a really big flow, which we don't necessarily recommend, but we know that it happens, you can search specifically for whatever action you're looking for. And
nice.
you can go to it. So, and it'll highlight it for you in the panel. So lots of cool stuff coming with diagramming. I can say from a roadmap perspective, the stuff that we are working on that is number 1, 2, and 3 on our list is do the following in parallel, which we've already started development on. We have great prototypes in place. We feel really strong about it. Support for flow stages, so we can build all your service catalog flows and marking stages and what stage requests are at and all that type of stuff, all within the diagram view. And then finally, building subflows in a diagram view. So right now we only have support for building flows as a diagram, but I know the people that are on this call probably are designing flows in a more modular way and rely heavily on subflows. So we're working on it. Obviously,
we could go on with
or
questions
save
for
as
another half
PDF.
hour, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I got all
But hey,
kinds of ideas, but you guys are always way ahead of me, so I'll keep them to myself.
I see some great comments in here, like, you know, stuff that warms my heart. Like, this will be my new favorite view for building flows. You know, that's exactly the type of response our team was was hoping for. So, yeah.
Yay, validation.
Cool. Not directly related, but when will dark mode come to Flow Designer? Not currently on the roadmap right now. Not saying it can't be done, but we have a couple other things that we're working on from like a collaboration and sharing perspective that are a little bit higher on our priority list right now. But certainly understand your want for that, because my computer and phone are all in dark mode as well, so I get it. Let's see. JC had a question. Search functionality is cool. Is that available in normal flow view? Not right now, but it is something that we are looking to incorporate. This was something that kind of came with our library that we were using for flow diagramming. Some other teams internally had kind of built out some of the framework for like this diagram view, and it kind of came with search. So we got it for free, and we are, you know, if people like it, we'll look for ways to port it over to the standard view.
And Steve says, where can I send a wish list? Idea portal.
Yeah.
Go to the community.
Yeah,
Idea portal's right at the top.
If you just categorize it as Flow Designer, I get email notifications for those ideas. If you're on the ServiceNow Dev Slack, I'm on there as well. I monitor the Flow Designer channel. And alternatively, I have a podcast coming out with Chuck, I think tomorrow, that talks about Flow Designer and what's coming up, and all my contact info is in there as well. So
great
feel free
announcement.
to
I was just going to do that.
see that? The little cross promo segue?
Well done.
We got him trained. We've also got one
Available
more
on
of
all
these
podcast
on
players
Flow
near
Designer. We've got another Flow Designer video on Friday around error handling, the new try feature. So looking forward to seeing that. Unfortunately, I will not be here. I'm going to be on PTO, paid time off, vacation, holiday, whatever you want to call it. And I may have to watch from a remote location. So if timing is right, I'll be in the chat and hopefully have a beverage at my side to join people on Live Coding Happy Hour this week. So have fun. Thank you so much, Brian. We do need to, we are at the top of the hour, but I want to thank you again. You are always full of great information. Kudos to you and your team for all of the features that have come out. A lot of hard work goes into that, and nice to see the interaction between you and the community, the idea portal, the Slack channel. All of that works out so well. It makes that warms my heart, at least.
Yeah. No,
and thank you, Brad and Earl.
Team, great people. Yeah. And thanks for everyone in the community that submits great ideas and attends sessions like these. It's a big part of how we influence our roadmap and make stuff that's better for you.
Okay, till next time, everybody, stay safe. We'll see you real soon. Learn a lot and share it wherever you can. Take care. Bye.